whispers and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on Earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause. Welcome to The Probable Cause. This is a podcast covering legal issues and the criminal justice system in Allen County, Indiana, northeastern Indiana, and occasionally the state of Indiana. I'm Jamie Duffy, your host and a local journalist. To my left is co-host Michael McAlexander, and he is the Allen County Prosecutor. Also contributing, we hope, by phone today is my right hand. That's what I call her. I've been calling her that for years. I think Wayne and the Journal-Gazette got used to me referring to my right hand. She came to her knowledge of the courts after the loss of her 22-year-old son to homicide nearly 9 years ago. Today we will talk about runaways. These are children who run away from home and foster homes, and possibly other situations that Mike might know that I'm not even aware of. But first we need to get to the courts, because that's one of the reasons we're here. I think we need to mention the trial last week. Nicholas Stewart, all of 25 years old, was convicted of murder, attempted murder, criminal recklessness, and then he also got the firearm enhancement in Indiana. If you use a gun in the commission of a crime, you can have 20 years added onto your sentence. And he did use a gun. He will be sentenced on August 15 and faces a massive sentence. Murder and attempted murder both carry sentences between 45 and 65 years because they are felony ones. The gun enhancement, as I said, is 20 years. Crim rec is a felony 6, so that's only up to 2.5 years. It was a party that he shot into. I did want to share with you something from A Probable Cause. It was written by the homicide detective at that time, Matt Klein. This is what these kids are living through. I say kids because they're in their early 20s. The second victim did not die, but he was shot. He stated he remembered a green laser light coming from the gun that shot him. He stated that he returned fire, but not until he was in a vehicle down the street and that he shot into the air. Doesn't say why, but he shot into the air. He indicated that he had difficulty drawing his firearm after he was shot. This is the life on the streets right now. Mm-hmm. Guns, guns, and guns. For the state, on the Nicholas Stewart case, it was represented by Chief Counsel Tessa Helge and Deputy Prosecutor Rachel Gushwend. Stewart had public defenders Jared Marks and David Feltz. This week in courts, what have we got, Mike?
Well, tomorrow, the 19th, is a county holiday for June umpteenth. And so the most county offices are closed tomorrow. So usually when the court has a holiday, I mean, a lot of our holidays are Monday holidays. So when that happens, you usually don't see a murder case set, because we usually set those for 4 days, so we don't have that many days to do it in. The other thing that this one, with the holiday being in the middle of the week, we generally are not big fans of allowing trials to go over a weekend because of the concern about jurors talking to people they shouldn't talk about, or doing home research and getting into things. We just recently had a case that a juror did some internet searching about the case, came back and shared information with the jury, which resulted in a mistrial on that case.
That was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember whose trial it was, because they were ready to go.
Well, it was really sad because it was a child molesting trial, and it was a very emotional time for the victim in the case. There were actually two victims, but one had been the subject of abuse over a long period of time. And she struggled with her testimony, with the emotions of it. And this is something that I like to stress.
Was this after one day of the whole trial taking place?
It was after 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
So,
I just remembered the name. I don't know if I should say him or not. But.
No, because it's going to be retried.
Right.
But this is part of the process here that is, I don't think people appreciate the impact on victims, the impact on any witness in a case. It is something you have to emotionally get ready for because you don't know how cross-examination is going to go. You're also talking about, especially in sex crimes, some very private matters and things that are not your fault, but you're talking about some of the most intimate details on the worst day of your life. So, just think about that and how you would feel if you were trying to get ready and knew you were going to walk into a room of 12 strangers in the jury box, plus whoever's out in the audience, and have to share those details of your life. And then pretend that you're a 14, 15, 16-year-old. That's a lot of responsibility to put on them, and it is very difficult.
Was there a Spanish translator for this one too? I
believe there was.
Yeah, because I saw the name. I just remembered the name. That's a funny point because when I was in France, I found out that the jury and the judges sit together, or the jury might be right, and they actually converse. They actually have a lunch together. And because the judges are worried about what some of these jurors are going to hear, it's a very different system. And they seem to think it works out fine. And they even come together to decide whether they're going to convict or not. And I just found that out the last time I was there, which was just a few weeks ago. So very interesting. And so we have that. I mean,
we didn't have any, coming back to it, we didn't really have too many trials set this week. And I believe all of them, there were several of them that pled on Monday. So we don't have any trials going this week.
That makes everybody's life a little easier.
It does. Sometimes it's not bad to have a few days off. It's a lot of pressure to get ready for a trial.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of work.
And I know next week we'll probably talk about some of the trials that are scheduled. I kind of looked through there. I saw 5 or 6 jury trials in one courtroom. I'm like, okay, not all of those can take place, so we'll have to see which one it's going to be, and then we'll come back to you all on that one. So now onto the subject of runaways. I think there's this modern perception that if a child runs away, there's trauma and abuse in the household. But I started counting the number of cases where that wasn't the case, where the parents simply lost control of the child, not because of physical, sexual, emotional abuse, but of other things. And then I started thinking about my own great-grandfather, who left Scotland, a little village called Maumee in Aberdeenshire, when he was 14 or 15 years old. I think he left with a friend. And he took a boat over, he went up the St. Lawrence Seaway onto Winnipeg, where a lot of Scots congregated. I don't know if maybe some of your relatives went to Winnipeg, because a last name like McAlexander, one has to wonder. But anyway, then he made his way down to Chicago, where he found a wife, and he had a very prosperous life. But he actually was a runaway. 14 or 15, that's a runaway, right? I think of the book I read about Jean Cocteau, who was a famous artist and filmmaker in France more than 100 years ago. He came from a very wealthy bourgeoisie type family outside Paris. He took off when he was a teenager, went to the south of France, hung out in opium dens and some other things where you would not want your children to be. He came back. And I thought of those things after I had coffee with a dear friend of mine. I'm not going to name him, but his son has been running away. And the son is going through a personal teenage crisis. He's lost his identity a little bit. He's in high school. It's not because his parents aren't loving, that they haven't provided everything, that they would give him every single thing he ever wanted. It's just that he's going through a personal crisis. So that doesn't fit into the trauma and abuse either. And then I do want to bring up, I've been thinking about this stuff for so long. I actually wrote a novel over 10 years ago. It's called Sparrow's Home, and this little girl could be considered a runaway. She's only 12 years old. She has what could be considered a miserable home life that she isn't exactly provided for. She lives in this wealthy Wall Street town where everybody has the things that all these little girls want, the Ugg boots, the North Face jackets, etc. And so she finds another place to sleep, and then she sort of creates a life there. She also was a runaway, and I would love to plug my book, which is on Amazon, because I just feel like it covers the same things. And when I was creating this podcast, I thought, wow, you know, I was thinking about these things way back when, and my kids were in school at the time. So Mike, according to the National Runaway Switchboard, an organization that takes calls from and helps kids who have either run away or they're thinking about running away, 1 in 7 kids between the ages of 10 and 18 will run away at some point. I found that number to be astronomical. 1 in 7 children in America will either run away or will consider running away. And that to me was extremely sobering. The Department of Justice, which is part of the federal government, they put out reports, you can go onto their website at any time, says reasons children run away are family problems, normal adolescent development, abuse, neglect, or feeling unsafe at home. Those are the common reasons, but not all of them. So, family problems. What have you seen being a prosecutor for over 40 years?
Well, it's probably not a point of emphasis for prosecutors. Partially, those are handled through juvenile court and are treated as status offenses, not crimes. So the 3 big ones in that area are truancy, runaways, underage drinking.
That's status offenses, which means that they don't get charged with anything?
Yeah, it's not a criminal penalty.
Right.
And there are various rules that we don't detain kids for those offenses. The Indiana legislature has passed some new stuff regarding truancy. We'll see how it goes. However, there's also the part that Indiana, when it comes to truancy, has pretty strong protections for homeschooling. And so the savvy parent can probably get out of an educational neglect type of prosecution by saying they're going to homeschool their kids, because there aren't really any standards for it.
You know, early on, when I was the education reporter for the Journal-Gazette, I did do a story on homeschooling. And my editor there did not believe me when I told him that you don't have to report your child if you're homeschooling them. You do not have to report this to the Indiana Department of Education. I was floored. And so the truancy law would be, when would that come into effect? Is it when a school reports that a child is not coming to school?
This was the other problem that the legislature this past year tried to work on, was the fact that nobody was using the same definition of truancy. Each school kind of had their own definition of when they considered it truancy.
Well, so let me ask you this. Why was the Indiana legislature even addressing this? How did it come up?
Well, I think there's been criticism about kids. It gets into graduation rates. You're obviously much less likely to graduate from high school if you only attend a third of the classes. But it's always been, I think, a difficult topic for the schools to address, for law enforcement to address, because with younger kids, it's usually going to be, if you will, the fault of the parent. With older kids, it can frequently be the fault of the kid. And where are you in the middle? And with kids, as your statistics showed, there's a lot of different reasons for why they do things or don't do things. And so taking the time to investigate something that isn't a crime generally falls more on probably a Department of Child Services. But then they have the same kind of issues. What do we do with it? You can run them through juvenile court, and this may be a good one for Judge Trevino, but and I know she was in the middle of trying to create a problem-solving court for truancy, but it still comes back to there isn't a good sanction against the parents or the kid for truancy. So I think that's why the legislature has tried to address this, and they're trying to come up with something that is a little more uniform that the schools can follow.
The schools can follow, but also that you can track kids that aren't getting any education at all, because Indiana does fall kind of in the lower half of education achievement anyway, and to have this problem even added on doesn't make our state look so good.
Well, and as I said, you've got this kind of fundamental question on this. Is this neglect by the parents, a lack of attention to parenting? Or is it a kid who's looking for bad ways to behave and running with the wrong crowd kind of thing? And so again, you're talking about some pretty big investments in investigation that we've got a lot of other things we're looking at.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the police thing, but it might be a good time to bring up what the DCS does. DCS, I found this online. DCS, which is the Department of Child Services in Indiana. It's called different things in different states, but it's called DCS here. If there is a child involved with DCS who is missing and or who may have run away, DCS will make an ongoing, diligent attempt to promptly locate any missing child involved with DCS. Now, this is how they do it. Number one, an open assessment. I mean, right there, it's going to take a while. Number two, an informal adjustment prevention plan. So now the caseworker has to come up with a plan. First, you have to get your caseworker. Number three, an out-of-home placement, including a residential facility. So that means you have to find a foster parent, or I know ACJC, I think, has,
or other institutions. I would also point out that all of those things require investigation and money.
Yes. So number four, there's 5 of them, an in-home child in need of services. So now they have to go to the home too, which is part of the investigation. And then number 5 is a trial home visit. So that seems very I know parents, when they have children who are runaways, are panicking, a lot of them. And so can't forget what they're going through. And then to go through those 5 steps, to try and figure out what to do with that child. And then the police are getting hollered at. This is something that's kind of hopeful, in other words, that approximately 93% of the children reported missing in 2023 were actually runaways. Now, why is that good? Because that means that there were not other factors like abduction or getting lost. Getting lost was interesting to me, but there wasn't any explanation for that. Nearly 29,000 reports of missing children were received by this group called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which they do have a website, and they're very interesting, and they do advocate on behalf of children all the time. However, and in Fort Wayne, we had last year more than 1,000 reports of runaways. The year before, there were 800, and in 2021, there were only 300. But I figure maybe COVID was a factor there.
Probably.
I mean, possibly children staying home. Not that they care about COVID as much, because they think they're...
Well, I think everybody was staying home.
Yes.
In 20 and 21. So that impacted those kind of numbers. There were a lot of kids that weren't in school anyways. So if they were playing hooky, it wasn't getting reported.
Yeah, and I'm sure there were a lot of
But I think, luckily, I mean, we've all seen the alerts that we get on our phones that say when a child or an older person is missing. And usually, within a couple of hours, they find the person.
Yeah, it's great that they do that, the Amber Alerts. However, that is also in this report here. Amber Alerts, runaways are not eligible for Amber Alerts. It's only, it's a high-profile notification system for missing children believed to be in danger. In other words, they have a medical situation or somebody who's very dangerous is after those children. So, and police only have so many resources.
Well, and also so much information. These are the kind of cases that the call that comes in may have a lot more background to. They're erring on the side of caution and trying to get something out, and later investigation may show the fact situation is much different than what they were told originally.
Right, it's like it's one spouse is getting even with the other spouse type thing.
That could happen.
Right.
You can also have kids saying something that they don't really mean. Anybody who's raised teenagers has probably caught the "I hate you," you know, "I want a different parent." Okay, well, we'll take you in and trade you in.
Right. But if you did that, you'd be in serious trouble.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say too here that, we got the Fort Wayne figures. Now last year, that's about 3 per day. Over 1,000, 1,050, and you've got 365 days in the year. 2.5, 3 kids a day being listed as runaways. There's no way the 500 officers, not all of them on duty at the same time, can go chasing after. They have to have a reliable report, I'm sure. But one of the most positive things to come out of this research was that the huge majority of runaways come home. The Journal of Adolescent Health found that over 90% of runaways return home within a month, and that more than 99% return within 12 months. That is from the Journal of Adolescent, from the Arizona State University Center for Problem-Oriented Policing. I can imagine what the acronym is for that, POP. They say most runaways return within 24 hours. And about 3/4 have returned home or to care after 1 week. That gets into the whole foster care situation, which we're not discussing today, but maybe someday we should.
Dinner time is a great motivator.
The what?
Dinner time when you're hungry.
Oh, yes. That should be a quote that we definitely put in this one. Of course, these figures are not going to comfort a parent who doesn't know where their child is. I did raise 2 teenage boys who are adults now, and I know that, if it went on to 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and I was madly calling them on their cell phone or trying to text them or whatever, and I didn't hear back, I can tell you I know exactly what the panic is of that parent. And you don't know, you think about car accidents, you think about everything. And when you finally hear that car door slam, or you finally hear that front door open, and you're just like, back me up on this one, Mike.
Oh, I'm just remembering the torment I put my parents through, my dad must have had a business trip or something, and there was a nice lady that he did like a couple of those a year, so it wasn't very common. But this very nice lady, I have 3 brothers, so
she
would stay with us when our folks were out of town. And I and 3 or 4 of my friends all decided we were going to hop a train. Now, we were like 10 years old. We had no idea of how to hop a train. And I think by the time it got dark, we were all back home. But
did you actually hop a train?
No, we didn't hop a train.
Where did you go to find to hop that train?
Well, we knew where the railroad tracks were near Indian Village.
Oh.
So, it was a silly thing that 10-year-olds do.
Did you have a knapsack on your back?
I can't really remember right now. I don't think so. It was so silly.
I hope you
I
see
think we
those
had a
friends.
couple of candy bars, and that was about it.
That'll
This
get
was
you
not
a long way.
This was not a planned event, but the poor babysitter had to live through that, and of course, I got appropriately punished when my parents came back home.
I would hope so. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. But did a train even go by?
Well, the trains went on that track. They still go on that track, but we didn't get close to it, I assure you.
Gosh, that's a great story. So what we're going to talk about here is what do parents do? And what are the rights of parents when it comes to their children, foster parents with their foster children? And what about those people who feel sorry for a child? And they might be the friend of their child and ask to spend the night, quite a few nights, so that they're couch surfing, and they don't call the parents. So where do they stand? We do have this phenomenon of couch surfing now where a child ends up staying in a friend's or a relative's room. I have a friend who grew up in California, and her mother did not feed them much. She said they'd have one can of soup and a few saltines. She preferred to spend her money on booze for the boyfriend. So they would take off, cross some very dangerous highways. We know how crowded, how many people live in California, those highways and everything else, and go to their favorite aunt's house because they know they would get fed. And consequently, she loves food now. But anyway, I mean, there's a situation where there was neglect. So, but what do those people do? This is a relative taking them in. Yeah, sure, I'm sure they called the mother. But, it's not always not only what happens, I guess I want to say. So they call police. And then the police are taking this down, having to decide whether this is something that they need to pursue. I talked with a sheriff's deputy here who said he lost a friend over a runaway. Didn't want me to mention his name. I said, that's fine. His friend was a stepfather, wanted to be that dad, really wanted to do the right thing, went to all the ball games, went to all the dance recitals, whatever it took. And the stepdaughter just ran sideways anyway. And it was a heartbreak and a half. He would call the sheriff's department. He'd say, she's in this town, or she's up in Kosciuszko County, or whatever. He said they went everywhere trying to find this girl. And they couldn't find her, but the stepdad got very angry with them. Well, why don't you find her? If you've ever read John Steinbeck's East of Eden, I know you're a big reader, there is a young woman in there who runs away, but not before burning her family home down with her parents inside. There are those kids out there. That just came to mind today. I haven't read that book in years, but that's always stayed with me. So what can the cops do? This is because many runaways return home on their own within a short time. They have limited options for handling them due to legal restrictions. That's where we're going to count on Mike again. Police have this Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act of 1974, which restricts their ability to hold them in secure facilities.
Well, and that's why the status offense definition, that it's not a crime necessarily to be a runaway or to be truant. There can be consequences for kids, but I think your bigger point here is the difficulty for if you are a parent and one of your kids' friends comes over and tells you about something in their household, what do you do? Do you notify the police if it seems to be criminal? Do you believe the kid? Is the kid telling you the truth? You don't know. And just as you as a parent looking at another kid may have questions about it, the police have even less information. You at least know your kid's opinion of their friend, but for the police, they're walking in cold. And in fairness to DCS, which catches a fair amount of criticism for, why'd you take this kid? You should have taken that kid. That kind of thing goes on. They're often dealing with limited information, and it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And that's true for all of us. And that's why it is such a difficult issue for, is the child running away from home because there are bad things happening in the home? And we certainly know that there are bad things that happen in a lot of homes. Or is the kid the problem? And the kid is trying to throw blame on his parents. So it's an interesting balance that is really hard to process through. And then when you mention all of the due process rights that we've kind of attached to these programs to try to find the truth, they get very convoluted and seem to be in the bureaucracy of DCS, in the bureaucracy of the court system, because when you get into a CHINS case, child in need of services, to look into some of this stuff, you're then filling the court with lawyers. I mean, DCS has lawyers. The parents have lawyers. The kid has a guardian ad litem who's frequently a lawyer or a CASA volunteer. So you've got all of these people plus a judge trying to figure out what's going on in this family and come up with the best solution for it. That is a tough thing to do. One of the things we're looking at right now is the legislature created this pilot project where 8 counties have been selected, where the prosecutor's office is to do the legal work for DCS. And I'm just really starting to get into it right now, but it is very complicated and a lot of different competing interests.
So what would be the advantage of having the prosecutor's office take over the legal work of DCS?
You know, it's kind of speculation on my part. I mean, there are some legislators that clearly are not happy with Department of Child Services. Over the years, there have been criticisms of they've been too quick to pull kids out of homes. Other times, the criticism has been, you were at that home and you didn't take the kid out, and the kid ended up severely injured or dead.
Well, there's a federal lawsuit.
So it is very, it's a delicate decision to make, and there is a problem. Why the legislature thinks that prosecutors should come in, I don't know if it's because they believe, I mean, our cases, we tend to get into them and resolve them relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. And whether they want some speed on that, I know there's a certain concern that what they call permanency in DCS cases is an issue of not putting kids into this kind of ping pong ball back and forth between foster care, relative placement. What is the best for the child? To reunify them with their parents, or to find a permanent spot for them either through adoption or other placement so they have security. And
does the child have any say when it comes to adoption? Let's say they're 7 or 8.
I think would they reach a certain age, their wishes are taken into account.
So, I mean,
none of these are easy issues. I think they're not black and white issues that there is absolutely this is the best way, because each situation is different. And so many of the issues that we talk about in criminal justice, whether it's mental health issues or addiction issues or general propensity to commit crimes, it's real easy to send it back to, well, doesn't this come down to how we raise our kids? And collectively, what is the best way to do it? Is it takes a village, or is it spare the rod and spoil the child kind of approach? And you know, as parents, we all know other people that are raising kids, and you see them do some things that you're going, man, I don't think that's a very good idea. As a grandparent, I know there are times when my son and daughter-in-law kind of look, you don't really know what you're doing here. And my attitude, and I think a lot of people that have raised kids, is, well, I managed to get you through this.
That's right. And I did a good job.
Yeah. So there's probably as many different ways to parent as there are parents. But It's also why it makes it very difficult, I think, for whether it's the court bureaucracy or DCS to come up with solutions that are always going to work.
So maybe they're hoping that this will streamline it if they can turn the legal issues, the legal work, over to the prosecutor's office, which tends to be more efficient in all these things.
Well, we'll see, because there is that part of it, as I said, that is the system been inherently designed to be slow, because you made a list of all these different types of hearings that you could go through.
Yeah.
And if you do all of that on every case, you're going to be going for quite a while. And then I think it's a question of what does the research show that's most important to a child, and how do you balance that? Is permanency or stabilization more important than reunification for the long-term development of the child? But if you do that, how does that impact with parental rights?
And meanwhile, I do think these cases have exploded, partially because so many more people use drugs.
Well, I think that certainly contributes to bad parenting.
Right.
If you're putting your addiction ahead of your child's needs.
Well, we've heard some horrific stories, and we can't leave out alcohol. When I look through the state statistics on that, alcohol actually outdoes drugs, in my opinion, but that's a whole nother too. Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're starting with an open assessment. One of the things that I hear all the time is, we've got to get back to God. You know, it's like, okay, well, how do we do that? You know, meanwhile, you've got this child suffering. Are you just going to like rise up and pray and hope that this problem is going to go away? I don't think so.
Well, I think that a lot of the people that say that are also saying that the fewer followers of traditional religion are also not following those traditional moral beliefs that tend to be a good foundation for raising people that are concerned about others before themselves. The things that go with a religious background frequently are founded in treating people fairly, equally, kindly, and that kind of, if we're not doing that, are we creating narcissist children that don't care about others? And going back to your talk about the one case you read about, how are we producing teenage kids, especially teenage boys, that are willing to pull out a gun and shoot somebody over a very minor disagreement, or over a little bit of marijuana or an Xbox or a pair of shoes? That all of that is going on, and we're seeing it. How did we raise kids to be that uncaring and not paying attention to just the basic flaws in that, or choices as a lifestyle? I mean, in Indiana, with minimum sentence of 45 years on a murder case, and if you're using a gun, the enhancement of up to 20 years,
Right.
and you serve 75% of that sentence, your life is pretty much done.
It's a life sentence, yeah. And we give out a lot of them in Indiana.
We do.
You know, I mean, that kind of goes back to whether the police can seize guns and can they get the guns. And that, I would love to talk about that someday, because when I was in England in Oxford Crown Court, the court clerk was saying, you know, they have a lot of stabbings over in England because they can't get guns. This is something maybe we should think about. I'm just putting it out there, okay?
Maybe people should treat each other better.
Well,
and think about what they do.
Instead of forcing people to go to church, because I think around here a lot of people do. What about the schools? Because, you know, I think last week I was also talking, we actually interviewed Judge Andrea Trevino, who heads up the juvenile court over there, and everything that goes with it, ACJC and kids on probation and everything. And I think people should listen to that one too. This was actually that was a good segue into this. But the Chamber of Commerce, this has stuck with me for years. they actually called for more guidance counselors. This was a number of years ago. And the schools, that the teachers can pick it out. I mean, hairdressers know when people are getting abused. Wonder if we could get more school guidance counselors. We need to put more money into the schools if we're going to do that. And I mean all schools. I'm not just talking about the public schools, but also the parochial schools who are accused of cherry picking, but nonetheless, they have all, every school has children who are facing these things. Every school has children who have access to guns and have emotional and psychological trauma and maybe suffering from abuse at home. And if we had more guidance counselors, and then the teachers, I know they get trained in this. I mean, I was the education reporter for a couple of years, but maybe bulk that up. What do you think of an idea like that, Mike?
Well, I think that goes to, if you see something, say something, the kind of the cliche, but it's really true. And the more people that are interactive with kids, there's a better chance of them confiding in adults. And let's face it, teachers are probably the primary people that they will be around. If they do go to church, then maybe ministers and stuff. But clearly most of our kids are spending time in school, and they've got teachers, and as they go up into middle and high school, they'll have a multiple choice of teachers around. So hopefully they bond with some of them. And many people have been inspired by the teachers they've had, either as friends or mentors. And the more that we have, the more survival, I guess, tools that are out there for kids, the better. And that's kind of the theory behind Boys and Girls Clubs and Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and all of those programs, to give options to kids that hopefully they're reached by something. That's why we support school athletics, that they find coaches that they identify with, and find things that will inspire them to learn how to be good citizens and achieve and become better citizens in the future. So that's why, I don't think all of our parents that are driving their kids to travel hockey and soccer and basketball and everything are doing it because they just want to be out on the roads. They're also trying to help their kids find real purpose in life.
They're finding real purpose, but I know, having been through that life in New Jersey, there's a lot of pressure. My kids went to a high school that was very, very wealthy people. Sparrow was not one of those, my character, but they had a lot of pressure on them. My son Robert would come back from lacrosse practice and say that a lot of the kids after the practice were complaining because their Ritalin and their Adderall was wearing off. There was pressure to do very well. They wanted their kids to get into Ivy League schools, which I don't think the pressure on Ivy League schools is great here. I think that's a good thing, but to get into, another big pressure was to play this sport in college. And that's really not very easy to do. And even if you go to Division III school, you're not going to get a full ride. You're not going to get a full ride in Division II. And then, I guess this is sort of off the topic, but it isn't. It's the pressures that these kids are under. And then we have other children who don't have enough to eat at home. And I know Associated Churches is trying to address this. And we do have people working on this problem. It's just that we can't give up on it. I guess that's what I want to say. I was told by a parent this week that if your child has been running away and is suffering through some kind of a personal crisis that can be resolved later on, because actually life does go on. You get older, your choices become different and everything else. But if you have a doctor, of course this gets into whether you've got health insurance or not in America, that's become a big issue again. But if you have a doctor who is aware and maybe prescribing your children with anxiety or depression meds, which apparently a lot of teenagers take now, And that doctor can also be the point person if the police pick up your child. He can be flagged, and then that child can be taken maybe for an evaluation at Parkview Randalia, go into Parkview Behavioral Health for a few days, and get an evaluation, maybe perhaps a reset, and not go to the juvenile detention center right then and there. Because I think, and I'm going to have to check with Mike on this, a lot of kids end up getting dropped off. What does it take? Do they have to be committing a crime out there for a cop to take that child to ACJC because they don't know what else to do with that child?
Generally, yes. I think as Judge Trevino said last week, there are situations where the home life, they're detaining kids because the parents don't want the kids back. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that's due to choices the parents are making or choices the child has made, probably vary some. But I know when we handled adult protective services calls, we would have parents of, usually it was severe mental illness, and their kids were in their 20s or 30s still living at home. And they would call up and ask us, what can we do? And it was basically commit them to an institution, admit them to a hospital if you had a medical issue, or arrest them. And if you didn't have one of those three, there really wasn't any place else to take the child or the young adult that nobody could handle. So it's families are a tough issue, and we try to respect the sanctity of the family and the rights of the parents. Mm-hmm. But until that intersects with someone else, we kind of tend to let them do their thing, which sometimes...
And you can't police every single family.
No.
It's impossible. I mean, we already know there were more than 1,000 children reported as runaways last year, just in Fort Wayne. That's 3 per day. There's just no way when they're out there doing investigations and you have special units and everything else, they cannot handle it all. Okay, so I think the thing that we want to end with here is something that I got from the Science Daily, but I think the DOJ backs this up too, is if you have family interaction, even if it's brief, it can improve the chances of a runaway returning home and staying home. So this is out to all the parents or the grandparents who are raising their children, to the foster parents. You try and have an interaction that might be through the police, might be through your attorney, might be through something else, maybe somebody who's monitoring it, but that can improve the chances of a child coming home. And Mike, do you want to have the last word?
No, I think you've kind of summarized it. These are just complicated issues that each family is a little bit different, and that's probably why we get such different outcomes from so many different sources. It's just really hard to identify what the best way to go with.
Wouldn't it be great to get a group of runaways, former runaways, together for the camera and just see what it took to get them home? But anyway, for right now, we're going to sign off. This has been The Probable Cause. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. We have a page that's dedicated to this called The Probable Cause. I post all the stories that I write there too. They're usually from probable cause affidavits. And you can also listen to us on Spotify and Apple. So for now, goodbye. This episode is filmed and edited by Frosty Pictures. The Probable Cause is produced by Maumee Media.
Worried when I crossed the Michigan line, a cop from Steuben County waiting on I-69. A headlamp went out while he pulled me over. Charged me with possession after I rolled down the window.
Now that's skunk.
Indians a trip when it comes to weed. It's like who doesn't smoke or use gummies? Your grandpa, your brother, your rich friend from school? Hell, throw in the whole courthouse and my attorney too. It's time those assholes change these stupid laws. It ain't worth the paper for a probable cause. Sitting on a bar stool in my usual place, this guy next to me said he was looking for some cocaine. Hell, I just sold him an 8-ball with a little piece off for me. But my buyer was a cop? Should've known he was a creep. So I'm a dealer, right? You gotta be kidding. It's a rich man's drug. I just take it because I'm injured. 8 years in Westville with a monkey on my back. There's more drugs in here than you can shake a shank at. One dirty drug test, man, this system's flawed. Undercover screwed me in my probable cause. Street crimes never did me no favors. I'm hooked on Fetty. I'm a junkie, not a felon. Told that son of a bitch on the way to lockup. I can't seem to shake it. I need help, not mocking. What do you want from someone who's been through the system? Drugs all through the house before mom and dad went to prison. Throw me in jail and give me a fine? Someday I'll be dead and away from your kind. Now I'm at the courthouse in front of a judge. Can't say my public defender cares for me much. Crimes are committed on both sides of the law. God help me now with this probable cause. C shift never gets old. Anything can happen when you're out on patrol. You think I'm just eating donuts, man? Give me a break. Nothing on this job is a piece of cake. Lights and sirens activated. This knucklehead wants to chase. Baby mama at the scene just spit in my face. Wife's worried that someday I won't be pulling up at all. You'll read about my killer in a probable cause. Man. She went through my phone and she seen my text. I told her forget it. It was just my ex. She took a swing and knocked me flat. Man, I went wild and hit her back. Judge slapped me with a no contact order. Now she's got the kids and she's staying with her mother. So she started it all and I have to take the fall. You can read my whole story in the probable cause. When I was young, caught a case for dealing and did my time. Yeah, I got a record, but I was doing fine. Running my own business on the southeast side. Yeah, I got a gun. I kept it on hand. Told the cop my reason, thought he'd understand. In this neighborhood, you need some protection. Attorney thought I could get just community corrections, but the judge decided to send me to prison. Can't get ahead no matter how hard I try. Read the probable cause, it'll make you
Whispers
cry.
and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on Earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause.